Who you believe you are is really affecting your motivation and follow through in your habits. Today, let's talk about that on the podcast. Welcome to the Love in Progress podcast, where we deep dive into self-reflection and healing as a catalyst for better relationships and leadership. I am your host and educator, Neena, and I'm here to be a guide to you in that process. Let's get started. Today, I want to talk about the relationship between your identity, who you see yourself as, and the corresponding behavior. We're diving into what we call identity-based motivation today, and it's kind of complex, if I'm being honest. But here's what I've seen. Research shows over and over and over again, if you identify as someone with a certain belief structure, you are much more likely to follow through on those habits. James Clear actually talks about it a lot in his book, Atomic Habits, one of my favorite personal development books. If you haven't read it, I'll drop it in the show notes and you can read it. It's a great one to start with. But he talks about if you identify as a violinist, then you're much more likely to practice the violin. Same, if you identify as a runner, you are much more likely to go out and run each day. And when we can tie back the belief that we are something, then our habits naturally find a reflection of that. And so when individuals are coming to me and saying, okay, I really want to be a good writer. I really want to be a better mother. I really want to have a good relationship and be a supportive partner. What I tell them to begin with is to start looking at their self-talk. Are you doing it just to complete the actions, or are you tying it back to this concrete belief and identity around that kind of person? I'm not just being nice. I am a nice person. Or on the other side of it, I'm not a jerk. I just acted like a jerk. Situational versus identity. Big difference. So this is going to be a super simple lesson for us today, but I would really challenge you to take stock of what identities you are personally resonating with right now. And if you haven't listened to my previous week's podcast episode, go back and listen to that, because I talk about that in your time management is understanding the kind of person you want to become and then allocating time to develop that kind of person. The same thing goes here. When individuals identify strongly with a particular role or a label, like what I shared, a violinist, a runner, whatever, it can create this sense of alignment between your self-concept and the behavior associated with that identity. This alignment may contribute to increased motivation to complete tasks related to that identity and a commitment to that consistency related to the identity. So if you're really struggling with one particular area of your life, I would ask you to, again, take stock. What is it that I'm believing about myself here? Am I just placing myself in the situation and saying I'm completing the actions, or are you reassuring yourself with that identity? Now, people are generally motivated to maintain consistency between their self-concept and their behavior. So if someone identifies as a violinist or a runner or a patient and loving mother, a connective and responsive partner, then they may be more inclined to engage in activities that are consistent with that identity, such as practicing the violin regularly, communicating with a softer tone. So if you keep seeing yourself act out in ways, especially in your relationships, that seem to not be the kind of person you want to be, then it's time to look at what you're believing about yourself. Because this is what I know. Your actions and habits are coming from this deep sense of who you are. And if at your core, you do not trust yourself to be a patient and loving mother or a connective partner, or if you're looking back and seeing all the reasons why you're not that, then you are sabotaging, my friends. It's time to take notice of what it is that you're believing about yourself, because for good or for ill, it's coming true. Now, I feel like this is a hard one to change sometimes, because we can look back at our past and find oodles of evidence that would be contrary to the kind of person we want to become. I have to talk myself into believing that I am something long before I have enough evidence to believe it so. And yet, coming back to that consistency in action and identity, every day that you do something that's in congruence with that new identity, you are solidifying it. You are building up self-integrity. You're ultimately building up self-trust, because that self-concept is then being secured. So cool. So if you really want to become a certain type of person, every time you do an activity that that type of person would do, you come in and remind yourself, I am a patient and loving mother. I can see it written all over the walls right now in how I'm acting, how I'm responding, my tone of voice, how I'm building a relationship of trust. Gosh, this can be so powerful, can't it? What we believe is constantly putting a filter over our entire world, and especially that meta world, how we are looking about and thinking about ourselves. Now, lastly, I just want to say contextual factors matter. I'm gonna talk straight at you. If you're in an environment where you have individuals who are putting you down and identifying roles and identities for you that you do not want to resonate with, then it is time to release those people from your environment. It is time to set boundaries and to not allow people to, for lack of a better word, name call, to call you a jerk, to call you selfish, to call you self-centered or egotistical or narcissistic. You can set that boundary and say, listen, maybe in the past I have acted that way, but I do not identify that way anymore. And I'm working really hard to change in so many beautiful ways. And I've got to start by believing that I am that kind of way. And I need your support in that. So I will no longer tolerate those kinds of names being called to me. And if you continue to do so, then you will not be provided the opportunity to be in my environment any longer. Standing up for yourself is a big part of personal development. And clear, my friends, is kind. Never forget that. Especially you sweet people pleasers out there. It's very important that your environment is setting you up for success. Be around people that buoy you up, that help encourage you. Don't let them be the only things that encourage you. Let yourself be the number one encourager, but be in a space where people are ever grace-giving, ever loving, ever compassionate, ever supportive, ever encouraging. And gosh, you're going to start to solidify some of those beautiful new identities of what you want to create. So here's what I want to tell you. Your goals and what you value can be brought in to these identity factors. And when you hold strong to what you want to be and who you are becoming, then the habits that you bring into your daily life are going to be purposeful and meaningful, because they're going to be solidifying that identity. And if you're noticing that some of your actions are in contrast to that belief structure, we need to go back and really clearly dissect and change, transform that self-talk and that self-belief so that you truly can move forward with that confirming self-identity. And you could move forward in a beautifully curated life, one that has that high motivation and consistency between your self-concept and your behavior. I know that's going to build a lot of self-confidence and increase your motivation all along the way. I think this is a great aspect for you to self-evaluate today. And I hope that you come out on the other side with tons of wonderful self-concepts, lots of beliefs about who you are and who you're becoming, because that's the future for you. I could feel it. I'm rooting for you today and always. Remember to live well, look well, and be well. And I will see you on the next podcast.